it's Yaz from Yorkshire Peaches Therapies, and welcome back to another episode of Hop, Skip and a Jump. Today I'm joined again by the amazing Chloe from CMP Therapies. In today's session, we discuss the difference between horse insurance and dog insurance. And a trigger warning as well, we do talk about horse PTS, so that's when you have an animal put to sleep and how that looks in the equine world. We then take a look at Chloe's qualifications and explore a little bit of the content around them. I'm going to stop talking, let's jump into it. Thank you so much, Chloe, for coming and speaking to me again. So we've literally been talking for the past nearly half an hour, and then I went, we need to stop talking, we're supposed to be recording a podcast, like, but this, so basically, just to bring you all up to speed so you're in the know, me and Chloe have just been talking about her lovely horse Tom, and Tom's been having some hoof things going on. Now I don't know nothing about horses, I know a little bit about horses. We've been looking at some hoof pictures and abscess pictures, and we've just been talking about that. And we started talking about horse insurance, and then we started talking about dog insurance. So hang on a minute. Let's stop. Let me just hit record and let's just recap this conversation because I think it's really interesting. So explain to me how horse insurance works.
So, I mean, I'm not the most like all-rounded because I've actually only ever had to claim in the last just before Christmas, I made my first ever claim on insurance. But insurance companies differ in the equine industry, and the company I'm with at the moment are really good. We're really enjoying them. But you typically get insured for the year rather than per condition. And then the way that the excess works differs as well. So typically you pay an excess per claim. You might have to do a co-insurance, because a lot of horse insurance is co-insurance now, which means that you pay, even though you pay your excess, you still pay a percentage, and then they'll cover the rest of the percentage. So typically it's about 25%, and then they do 75%. And sometimes that's alongside the excess, or in my case with my insurance company, I just pay one excess in a 12-month period. So I lowered my premium so that I could increase I increased my excess so that my monthly premium was lower. What that means is every time you claim, you as long as you've covered that first excess, you then don't have to pay the excess again. So like my first insurance claim was about £1,000, I think it was, and I had he had he had a squamous cell sarcoma in his eye, and it was about £1,000 all in all, but my excess was 400 and something. So once my excess was covered, I then paid 25% on top of that, and then the rest of it I got back. So I think it worked out as about 400 or something quid I got back, which is all right. But then it meant that when I had a different thing and I needed to claim for that, all I needed to pay was 25% of the claim, and then they would return to me the 75%, because I pay the vets up front for anything I do. But with from what I understand about dog insurance, and I've never had it myself, but my parents have dogs, and they get it per claim. They get it per condition, sorry. So I think it's like however much you get covered for per condition, whereas for horses, you get a limited amount for the year. So previous insurances I have been with in the past have about 3,000 for the entire year, which isn't very much.
That's not very much.
That's for everything, basically. And then but now the one I'm with is £6,500 I've got, so it's quite good. Well, I believe that it was like that, but I never claimed before, so I never really fully understood it. But I think that's how it was. So now I can just claim for what I need to claim for, and then they'll just deduct it. And I'm actually with Agria Insurance, and they do a really great thing, which is they will do lifetime insurance. So I can, and the reason why I say that, I think, is because anyone would know who it was Agria anyway. When I talk about lifetime insurance, I think they're the only one that does it in the UK for equine. But it means that if he gets an abscess again, or his eye plays up again, they will still continue to cover that condition because it started after the policy started. So I'm so lucky I changed insurance company.
Yes,
because the way typical insurance works is that once you claim, they then exclude that from your insurance moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So you would then end up with like, oh, a front leg can't claim here, or that eye you can't claim, and then you kind of end up with what can I claim for rather than what can I insure.
Do you get asked about insurance recommendations just like through work? So like customers horses that you treat, do people ask you about insurance? Because I get asked a lot about insurance.
Yeah, sometimes. I definitely think it depends on the client, really, because some people choose not to have insurance and some people do. I always think that insurance is a must. If it's, I always say it's a must. And yeah, I do. I think a lot of the times it's people talking about it. My experiences of hearing about clients they've paid out for X, Y, and Z. Like, have they been okay with paying out? Have they not? Because I think insurance companies will.
They'll try and wiggle out. They'll try and wiggle out
to pay things that they don't need to pay. So you can hear some nightmare stories of people not getting payouts when they should have done, etc., or not reading the small print, which is a lady on my yard had that. She didn't read the small print or something, and then her horse ended up having a big hospital stay, and she had to cover it all herself because it wasn't in the fine print. So yeah, I think I do get the recommendation, and also for complementary therapies, people ask about that as well, about it being covered. Yeah,
that's something I'd say with the questions that I get asked my like opinions on insurance policies, and I always say, listen, like, I don't work for an insurance company.
Yes,
I have two companies that I recommend. So I personally am with Petplan. I've been with Petplan for years. I think I've had to claim once I've claimed for a couple of bits on Rodney and Lily's policy. They've always been really good. When I've had to do like invoices for customers so they can claim for my services. So that's another reason why it's really important that when you're using a therapist that they are part of a governing body, because it's the governing body's job to make sure that you are recognised with an insurance company. So when I do an insurance claim, they get a copy of my insurance to say that I can practice, and they get a copy of my governing body kind of certificate. And I send all of that off, job's good in, people get paid out. But that's not an absolute guarantee, because every policy is different. With Petplan, with the one that I've got lifetime cover for mine. I've got like the highest whatever it is. I was like, I just want to make sure they're covered for everything. So they have things like lifetime cover, it's cover per condition. So I talk to people about that, about the terminology that's used. Another company that I recommend is Many Pets, previously bought by Many. Many Pets. I find that they're really good. But there's other insurance companies I've dealt with as well. I think it's Direct Line. I think I've done a few claims for. I want to say maybe Tesco's dog insurance. So each policy is going to be different. But what I say, especially if you have a pedigree dog, I know that insurance can be very expensive. The reason that it's mega expensive is because to have a pedigree dog, to have a dog look a certain way or have certain characteristics or whatever, also means that they are predisposed to certain genetic conditions. So, for example, the French Bulldog, we've got things like Boas, we've got luxation patella, the Daxi, IVDD, Golden Retrievers, Cancer, Labradors, hips, so they go off statistics, right?
Yeah, of course.
They go off statistics. So how often are claims going in for French Bulldogs for this, for Golden Retrievers for this, Staffies for this, and that's what makes up your premium price, or what you pay per month. And I know that especially now we're in a cost of living crisis and people aren't wanting to insure their dogs, or they're not, but I'm telling you now, vet bills can rack up into thousands in one night. One night they can rack up really quickly.
It's scary as well.
Scary.
I mean, insurance companies for horses as well are crazy, because I don't know I don't mean we touched it on them before we were recording, but with horse insurance, some insurance companies, you value your horse. So if you value that, it's all to do with then like what they pay when they die, because they'll pay out when your animal dies as well with horse insurance. So
to cover To cover the cost of the horse.
Cover the value. So
really,
so if you it depends on your insurance, and that typically is more expensive.
Mm.
But if you've insured your horse at that level, you've got that level of cover where your horse passes away, or also is something called loss of use, where they've had an injury or something's happened where they can no longer do the job that you bought them for. So for example, if you bought them to be ridden and then they can't be ridden as a result of their injury, you can claim for loss of use, which then means that you get a payout. A bit like when you have life insurance cover, really, they get a payout because there's been a change, but then they also pay out on death. So, but then if you cover them over that certain amount, it's typically about £5,000 is where the insurance companies change.
Okay.
They ask you to do loads of pre-work before they do the assessments. So you have to go through something which is called a vetting. So typically they ask for a 5-stage, but they might only want a 2. And that's where they'll check the heart rate. They might do some x-rays, for example. And one of the things they do something called a lameness workup, and a thing where they essentially hold the deflection test, I think is what it's actually called, if my brain works, where they basically pick up a back leg, hold it for like 5 minutes in the air, and then they ask the horse, they put it down, and then they trot on. And then it's about, are they able to just go nicely and not have any kind of problems, or do they come up a lame? Now, I'm not being funny, but like, if you hold my leg in the air and ask me to walk straight after that, chances are I'm probably going to walk a bit funny.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, and so, I mean, there's lots of debate on the equine vetting and whether the vetting is a good measure of everything. And I do think when you're buying a horse, having a vetting is very helpful, particularly x-rays. And I think probably x-rays are sometimes more important than
is that
than
quite
the other
critical
stuff.
then for when, so say if you were going to buy a horse, that they have this vetting before you buy them, so they've had the blood work?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had 2 horses, and both of them I did not get vetted. So I'm not really one to talk about that. But from a professional standpoint, I would always say get a vetting, particularly a 2-stage. If you
so with the 2-stage, is that the heart and bloods and stuff?
Yeah, it does. Like I don't think it does blood work. I think it does the heart rate and like eyes, nose, and like that kind of checks, and just does basic kind of checking. But insurance companies will request a 5-stage vetting if your horse is valued over a certain amount. Which,
so if it was like a sporting horse or something like that, and it was worth
even Tom, who I just used to go hacking, and because he's a rare breed, and his actual worth is like his value is probably higher than I would want to insure him for anyway. But the flip side for Tom is that he's a big heavy horse. He's a Clydesdale, so he's a big heavy horse, is holding his leg up in the air and making him trot around on a circle or a straight line or whatever, because they also lunge them as well, and it's quite, I mean, 5-stage vetting, it's very intense. You know, I don't think he'd pass it, and then that's where it all gets, and not because he's got any major issues, but he's a big heavy horse,
and he's just not designed to
do
that.
So, I mean, but the insurances are all a bit funny, but yeah, you do some people will get a payout when their horse passes away, which for some people who want to buy another horse, that's really helpful, because they know that money's kind of secured, and then they can, but as long as the horses have died in the right, because you know, there's obviously another trigger warning, putting PTS is going to come up, but you know, if you have the horse put to sleep by the vet, or if you do it a bit more, like if you get the huntsman, what you call the huntman, those people, then like the insurance companies won't pay out necessarily for the huntsman, but the horse might be in a really like challenging situation or really horrendous injury that really needs that element. And then
this is something I've spoke about with an equine therapist. So part of obviously part of my big part of my job is pain management, and with that comes palliative care, and with that comes conversations about quality of life and about PTS. Obviously that's never a call for, you know, me to make, but having that conversation about what that can look like, because I think sometimes this doesn't get spoken about enough, and I'm currently writing an article for Animal Therapy magazine about the use of Fetizo in those end of life stages.
Nice.
So I've just sat down and I was like, oh, I need to write about this today, and I've done about 400 words of it. So but this is something I don't think is talked enough about in the therapy world, especially from like the canine perspective. So when I'm dealing with a dog that's poorly and we're starting to see that decline, I've been doing this for five years now, working with dogs for nearly a decade. Like, you can see when it's coming almost, because, well, there's those signs, isn't there? And I have a conversation with people about, okay, this is what it can look like. And I'm very passionate about having these conversations, because I think we lose so much autonomy in that situation. You know, you might want to take them to the vets. That might be the best thing for you. But did you know that you can have them, you know, PTS at home? And this is what it can look like. And this is my experience. And this is what happened when I had Snoopy put to sleep. And I explained the stages just to prepare people. You don't, when you pick up your puppy, you don't get a leaflet about how these things are done. And sometimes it can feel like a bit of a rushed decision.
So sometimes it can happen so quickly.
It can happen so quickly. So the choice, absolutely, those decisions are taken from you. But if you have the opportunity, you can facilitate something really beautiful.
100%. I think with horses, it's
different though. With horses,
it is challenging, and I've seen some really horrendous situations in my time before with horses, where, because, you know, the vets have to travel to you 90% of the time. So, you know, you can get vets where you're trying to call them out, and then they're like, you know, 45 minutes to an hour, where I've had it before where horses have need urgent medical care, which have ended in PTS before, but it's taken like, you know, an hour and 40 minutes for the vets to come, which for an animal who's suffering is really tough.
And such a big animal as well, that is so dangerous. But it can be incredibly dangerous, because this is something I talked to an equine therapist about, and I said, because I really had no idea about, because I'm not in that world, I didn't really have a clue on what occurred. I feel like we're dancing around the topic. I'm just going to say it. So okay, so so you've got the choice of having the vet come out and they euthanize them using drugs, which isn't always a guarantee that actually they go under. They're really big animals.
It take a long time.
It take a long time for him to pass. And then the other option is where I believe they're shot in the head. And I was like, oh God almighty. I was like, shot in the head. And she went, well, put it this way. She says, I've seen horses gallop on a broken leg. She said, so we can't leave them like that. They something needs to, and it's instantaneous.
And they can't, and you know, the ones I've witnessed that have been like that, because I've seen both sides, like, and they're never nice.
Is this something like it's quite common for you to see on the yard? Is it like?
I think I've been really unlucky in a couple of situations.
Right, okay.
And I worked before I did all my training and stuff, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point.
Yes.
Before I did all that, I did work for some yards, and one was a riding school, and they had some older horses, so we did see a couple of times. Never was super privy to actually witnessing that. I did witness vet ones before, not there, somewhere else. But lots of but I've also had friends who have been there when their horses and things like that, really. But horses, because they can't really see there, and it can be done really nicely, as nice can be, and they don't really know it's coming until it's happened.
And even at that point, they're gone.
And it's much quicker. It's But to be fair, I have seen other ones that like injection ones that have been fairly quick as well, but you hear the horror stories of it not working and them being in pain. And like your friend, you know, your therapist friend said, horses will go into that fight or flight response, and they will gallop around on a completely broken leg. They will try and continue to move, and it's because it's their reaction in their body to just,
because they're a prey animal.
Exactly, it's it's in them to just run. away from danger or whatever. So it can be really, it's not nice to see. But yeah, but then going back to the insurance bit, if you choose to do it from the huntsman or the gun, your insurance company won't pay out. Likely they won't pay out,
Really?
because it's got to be a vet's decision to do that.
Right.
So you kind of need, like, so then that can be really hard from an owner perspective, potentially, if you're faced with that situation and actually you think, you know, I need the death, because you can also get death on your insurance where they'll help cover the costs of the death. So like for like, you know, the vet treatments or like removal of the body,
like that with I think because of course removal of the bodies, yes,
because you can't bury a horse, can you? You're not allowed legally. You can't bury a horse.
Really?
So, yeah. I mean, there are buried horses all over the place, but
I was going to say, I'm sure
not. I mean, there's some like famous ones, and I'm sure probably like the royalty or whatever have had horses, and you know, things like that. But yeah, you're not actually meant to bury horses, so they are meant to be taken away and dealt with from external things. So yeah, but you've got to pay for that removal, and you've got to pay for.
And they're big animals.
They're huge. You can't just put it in the back of your car.
No.
Like, you can't even, and even to like, you know, get them onto a trailer or a trolley or like a lorry or something,
that
you can't do that on your own, and you can't do that, you know, and it's not something you're going to want to be dealing with in that situation. You want to be able to pay and hand it over to somebody else to just deal with for you.
I know that when I spoke to my friend who's a equine therapist, she said we were talking about this. This is when brain's gone now. So trigger warning, I'm going to be talking about anatomy dissection. And she said, we were talking about dissection. I said, do you know what? I'd find it so interesting. I was like, but my only concern is that that I'd like pass out or something like that. I said, B, if someone was disrespectful to the body, I'd find that like, and I was like, then it comes up like, what is being disrespectful to the body? What does that look like? What does that look like? Because my idea of being disrespectful is going to be different to someone else's idea.
Yeah.
Because I mean, from a learning perspective, a canine dissection would be absolutely phenomenal, but I don't think I could do it. No.
I've done equine ones before.
I think if they covered the head, so I couldn't see their face, I think maybe I could be open to that. But the only place I've seen canine dissections done is down, like right down south in the bottom of the country. It's not. And I just, but what my therapist friend was saying, because I was like, you know, they're respectful to the body. I was like, that was someone, you know, that was a living being. And yes, we want to learn from it. But, and she said, well, in equine world is that you plait flowers into their mane and into their tail and stuff.
Some people do that, people will take their hair and stuff as well, and people like take bits and stuff. But dissections are really good. I did a lot when I was at university. We had to do a lot for our course and to understand anatomy and really looking at the limbs, and that was really hard because I remember just one time getting this little leg, and we were doing a limb dissection, and I just got given a leg. And I was like, I have to laugh, because
you have to laugh or you cry,
because it's a little leg and it's not attached to anything, and you think blimmin' heck, and it is really sad. But the thing is you it's good to learn about the structures, and it's really interesting to see how even when the limb was presented to me in the form it was, we could get down to the tendons and actually see how the tendons all moved, and actually do the mechanics of the leg and actually see how it all works. It's really interesting.
And I think as well, like it's a tough part of learning, but learning that from the anatomy and the dissection is only going to further your understanding so that you can further help horses. Let's talk about your qualifications, because this is something. So there we go. Welcome to mine and Chloe's conversation.
This is us all the time.
This is us all the time. Like, so where did you? So what's your base qualification? So you've done a degree, haven't you?
Yeah, so I did equine sports therapy and rehabilitation, and I did that at Greenwich University when it was in collaboration with Hadlow. So a lot of agricultural colleges will collaborate with a university. So I did that, and I started that in 2015, and I finished that in 2018. And then as part of that course, we had to do a additional qualification. So and most of us did choose to do massage or some form of some form of therapy. Some people did first aid and things like that. So I chose to do massage, and I came across Joe, and I trained with Joe, and obviously you trained with Joe, and that's sort of partly how we know each other, as well as mainly being for Tizo. Yes. And so I did my training there, and that was in the middle, and I started my massage practice in the middle of doing my degree. But actually, I think my degree really gave me a real big head start on understanding the anatomy, and because it obviously had been drilled into me from first year and through to through the degree, but it really gave me the eye. Like, that course really gave me like being able to see a horse and understanding the biomechanics and how it was moving, and really just to be able to spot where the issues are. And so, and that was really based on rehabilitation, but it also had in it hydrotherapy. So we learned how to swim horses, which was cool, and we did it in a straight pool, which is typically better than a round pool,
right,
for the horses, for their hearts and things, and also learning about understanding swimming. So horses shouldn't really swim too much, because it actually puts them into the sort of opposite way of moving that we want them to. We want them to sort of round through their back, where actually they kind of end up hollowing.
yes.
But we also learned and understood how to use the water treadmills, and then another piece of equipment called a spa, which was basically a cold water spa with salts in it, that like bubbled around, like a bit like a jacuzzi, I guess, but a cold one. Yeah, but you could set the water levels to different heights within the leg. So actually, when you combined the therapy together, you had the spa, which was able to support the drainage and the lymph and the tendons and the reducing that inflammation, but the swimming enabled the muscles to move with not so much pressure.
Yes.
But then also, when the horse was in a better fitness place, you could put them onto the treadmill, and they could train their muscles in that way and get them fitter and stronger through the water treadmill, because again, the water treadmill you could set to different heights as well. So amazing. Yeah, and that was cool. And obviously getting horses used to those pieces of equipment, because it's not normal for horses to just go onto a treadmill and then understand how it works. So that was quite good. And yeah, the course was really cool. We also looked at like rider biomechanics and how rider movement affected the horses, and putting together like programs for the riders as well, and rehab programs for the horses. And yeah, it was really cool. And then I went on to do some other things after that, really, but more so just CPD courses to support that, because I'd always planned to do veterinary physiotherapy, to be honest. It was always the plan. And when I went to university, you couldn't, which makes me sound really old, and it really wasn't that long ago, but it's just the way the qualifications have changed now. It's just that you couldn't go straight into veterinary physiotherapy as an integrated master's. You had to do a degree and then a master's, or you had to do either chiropractics or physiotherapy for people and then train as animals, or do some sort of equine science qualification or equine therapy and then do the masters after that. But really, when I looked at the module breakdown for the vet physio courses, the real difference for me was the use of machines and electrotherapies. And it wasn't something I was too interested in at the time. And for me, weighing up the financials of going back to uni and doing that, based on what I wanted to do in industry, was very much, I was quite happy with what I'd done so far, and just felt that if I did more CPDs and added to my toolkit in that sense, then I kind of covered the bases that I wanted to cover. So that's really why I didn't do it. And then I have gone back to uni since, but to do something completely different.
Completely different, but something that is very valuable to this industry. So tell me about your masters. Tell me what you did in your masters.
So I studied.
Me and Clobo can talk for England. That's why I've put this podcast into 2 episodes. So be sure to tune in next week, where we continue this conversation with Chloe. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to like, share and subscribe. Lots of love to you and your dogs. Take care for now. Bye.